Ready? 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 I'd like to call to order Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, January 23rd of 2024 at 7 p.m. to order. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Berry, would you call the roll? And as Trustee Vosberg has indicated, she's on vacation. Thank you.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Clerk Berry.
Item A is the approval of the agenda. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
With the removal of the closed session items,
Yes, with
postponed until February 13th meeting.
yes, with the postponement of items 14A and 14B, closed session items postponed to the February 13th, 2024 meeting.
I will support that motion.
Support.
Got it. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 5, presentations. Are there any department reports or presentations tonight? I will turn it over to Clerk Berry for her presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a brief department report and update to the board. I was unable to give you a written weekly update, so I am going to do it verbally. The first wave of absentee ballots went out on Friday. Those were to the individuals who have placed themselves on the permanent ballot list and have selected a presidential primary preference ballot. For those who are on the permanent ballot list, it is a requirement that they select a one party ballot or the other. We have two ballots for this election, one the Republican primary candidates and the other is the Democrat presidential primary candidates. Voters on that list need to select which ballot they would like to receive. So for those who did make that selection, those ballots went out on Friday. For the individuals who have yet to make that selection because they have not returned their form, they have not indicated on an absentee ballot application which ballot they would like, we are in the process of contacting those voters. There was a letter that went out last week alerting them that they need to inform us of their choice. And we are also going to be calling them, texting, and emailing them as well over the next couple of weeks if we do not hear from those individuals. The absentee ballot applications for those who are not on the permanent ballot list have also gone out, and we've begun to receive those back. We've received to date approximately 500 of those back out of 12,000, so there is still a considerable number of those to be returned to the clerk's office. We are continuing to process those on a daily basis as we receive them. We are also finalizing all of the preparations that will be necessary to begin the early voting period. The early voting period will begin on Saturday, February the 17th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it will go until 4:30 p.m. daily, including Saturdays, Sundays, and federal holidays. We are also working on the continuing voter education plan. We have a 2024 voter guide that is being compiled as well that will be mailed to all doors. Every door in Chesterfield will receive that, as well as 2 additional postcard mailings that will be alerting voters to specifics regarding early voting, absentee voting, and election day voting. So we are implementing that, and all of those things are being finalized this week and should be mailed out at intervals over the next 3 weeks. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Just a brief update from the library board. Library board met on January 17th. Last month, I informed the board and the public of the library's feasibility study as it relates to their potential utilization or partnership with the Township Community Center. Just to remind everybody, the library is a separate entity from the Township Board. Their trustees are elected like us, and they operate with a separate millage from anything to do with the Township General Fund. And what they are in the middle of trying to figure out is whether or not a move from the existing library to some space, potentially half of the community center that the township currently leases and I believe is interested in purchasing. The library has been completing a feasibility study to look at what that space could potentially bring in the way of a new library. And the intention originally was to try to have the feasibility study completed and then back to the township board, or I guess our point person, Mr. Kersten, who's been actively engaged with the library to understand what their interest is. Unfortunately, they weren't able to complete and take a vote at the January meeting, and they intend to bring it back to the board with the hope of having a decision reached at their February meeting. The issues involving some last-minute reviews of, I think the engineers were looking at some electrical issues that they wanted to fully vet before they made a decision. But as you recall, in December, the early indications were that the library anticipated approximately in the neighborhood of a roughly $10 million investment to create a proper library in the existing space. So they are continuing to look at all of the associated costs and potential problems, upsides, downsides, and they anticipate having a decision reached by their board to come back to the township with at the February meeting, which will take place on February 21st at the library. Those meetings are always on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. The other issue of some I thought interest was 2024 marks the 30th anniversary of the Chesterfield Township Library, and they are planning to roll out some celebration events, not only public but also internal for staff. So they are forming a committee to take a look at some of the ways that they might commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Township Library. The last issue that was of pretty significance was the Friends of Chesterfield Library, which is a group that raises funds on behalf of the library. They typically raise the bulk of their funds from book sales, used book sales, and different events. They presented the board with a check for $2,700, which was the result of their most recent fundraising efforts. And the intention is to use that money for a portable water station, which is needed. The library, as it currently sits, does not have drinking water and things in a number of their craft rooms in different places. So the portable water station is something that patrons have asked for, and the Friends of Chesterfield Library came through for them. So again, more significant details regarding the feasibility for the February meeting, and I'll bring that back to the board as soon as I have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson, anything? Just a few things that I'm going to cover from the supervisor's office. Since the flooding of July, August, the staff's been working diligently and to physically inspect each detention basin that's within the township. There are currently 7 of them in some capacity that are under the control of the township, established through historical SAD districts. And each one of those SAD districts it goes back to the 80s, some of them as recently as the 90s, and they were established under different legislation at the time. So we're diligently researching each and every one of them to give an assessment on each. There's some issues that we've identified right off the bat. Some of these retention basins have fallen out of spec, what we believe. There needs to be further attention added to them. But what we plan to do is get estimates of that cost and bring it back to each individual district that has a retention and detention basin, and in a public setting, notify those owners of what the potential cost could be to return those retention and detention basins back into original specs. And just for note, each one has a different dynamic to how it was presented through to the board, and there's different verbiages, different intentions for each one, and we've had to weed through those and make sure that they're what we can and can't do. We've identified our first one. We plan to bring that sometime in March. We're going to have a public informational meeting for each individual SAD district, as I stated, and we'll have an estimate of cost of what that is, so the residents will have full disclosure of what, number one, our intentions are, and then what the potential cost is for each. Along with that, we're going to include something that we've done. There are several private retention ponds that are throughout the township that also need to be addressed. Although we're much more limited in these areas in enforcement, we are going to take those on and at least work with the property owners and make sure that these detention ponds are functioning in the way that they are designed to do. Along with that, we'll continue to work with the County Drain Commissioner along with the drains, and that project is progressing nicely. Unfortunately, the weather is somewhat restricted to have that group come out and start immediately, but they do have a plan. Our hope is to get them in along with our informational meetings to give their presentation. And as some of the residents may have noticed, the DPW is currently out surveying every stormwater drain and manhole within our network. Several different issues that they're looking at. I don't want to say issues, but just for discovery, they're making sure that they're in the right place, that they are functioning. They're actually taking the covers off and looking at them, make sure that there's any maintenance that needs on them. And in some cases, making sure that they're not covered. They have identified several drains in easements and in right-of-ways that unfortunately have been covered, so they will uncover them. Along with that, mark the geolocation. So just an update on that progress. On the progress of that plan that we're working with, and we'll hopefully get it in front of the board here in the coming weeks. And that's all I have from the supervisor's office at this time. Item 7, public comments. Public comments on agenda items only. There is a 3-minute time limit. If you would, please state your name for the record, and the clock will begin when you speak. The mic is open.
My name is Joe Kadich, live on Sutton. I had something to say, but I wanted to start out with the fact that since the rain and everything, the only thing you've done is look at the storm sewers, which is primarily the county's problem. And you've neglected what happened with those of us that had sewer backup. And it happened because of the fact that there was an equipment failure somewhere along the line. You keep denying that. You've not looked at it. You've not explained why it happened. And it bothers me. You keep evading everything. And the other fact is that since you've been in here, I've been asking what happened to the $2.5 to $2.75 million a year that's collected in the water bills and sewer bills to upgrade, replace old lines, and do everything to help these lines updated. There's nothing been done since you've had office. You can't explain where the money went to. When Activetti was here, he had a few instances, But between the two of you, there's probably $20 million that was spent. Wasn't spent, but it was spent on something other than the sewer and water.
Mr. Kadich, can I interrupt you? Can you keep your topics to the agenda items right now?
Well, you just talked about it, so I'm talking
That was
about
my
it. I presume
presentation.
that's
These
an
are agenda
agenda
items.
item.
Continue, but on the agenda items, please.
This is an
Got to be fair to
agenda.
everybody.
Can't hide everything. You know, you could talk, you could try and drown me out and everything, but you're gonna have to face up to it one of these days. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the item that is the meeting that was just now postponed, the closed meeting, as to, I was wondering what was gonna happen. The last I heard was that the lawyer talked to you guys and said that there was gonna be a disposition from the judge as to whether he was gonna rule that you signed the agreement that essentially to put that big sign up there on Hall Road that didn't meet the standards of the zoning commission. The zoning commission knocked it down, so it went to court, and probably they're gonna get their way and they're gonna have their big sign up there. And did this for what? We gained nothing from it. That contract was probably worth, the guy that owns the contract would probably just sell that contract for $2 million, just because of the fact that he controls that land now. And we got nothing out of it, absolutely nothing. The only thing I could see that happened there was you got a good campaign contribution from him. And your other friend will be able to use the sign to have his marijuana thing on there.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments?
Paul Lafata, Chesterfield Township. The agenda item for surveying Pollard Park by AEW, and it mentions permanent stakes. I tell you a little story. Lyle Wynn did the surveying for AEW for Weber Paddle Park for the wetlands. They tied little ribbons around low-lying trees and stuff. So 3 months later, when the DNR came through, there was nothing there. They couldn't tell where the wetlands were. So Lyle Wynn had it surveyed again, and guess what? Township paid Lyle Wynn and AEW the second time for the second survey. And they put wooden stakes in there, and last time I looked, I don't even think the wooden stakes are there for the wetlands. So I'm assuming if there's any construction there, that'll Weber Paddle Park will probably get surveyed the third time. So my question is when they say permanent stakes, what are we talking about? Are we talking about wood stakes, or are we talking about 4-foot solid metal stakes so they'll never go away? But, you know, it gets kind of repetitive when we pay our contractors 2 and 3 times to do the same job. It gets to be ridiculous. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. In regards to the agenda item C, what Mr. Lafata was talking about, this isn't the first time that we continuously pay for repetitive services in this township, and AEW comes up an awful lot. And I'm asking Brad Kersten and Kathy Elliott to recuse herself because AEW makes a lot of contributions to your campaign, so I think the right thing to do would be to recuse yourself from that vote. And I think any board member that accepts any money from any of our vendors, the proper and ethical thing to do is to recuse yourself when it comes to vote. As far as item D on public safety, I'm in full support of the 3 new patrol vehicles, and I do have a question on the 3 administrative vehicles. I was wondering if one of them was the lease vehicle that we give the director of the police department, or if those are three separate items, three vehicles that were on the agenda item. I mean, public safety is always a speaker priority and always will be. So we need to approve that. On the bill run, I want to thank Brad Kersten for labeling. He had a ticket that he purchased for one of the chambers, and he properly noted it on the bill run. I was wondering if maybe you could give us a report on what you picked up at that luncheon event that the taxpayers paid. And then for Treasurer Elliott, on your breakdown on the statement on the bill run, I'm just curious. Notice that you bought a wall calendar for $43.14. That's one of the most expensive wall calendars that I've ever seen. So I was just wondering if that was your vacation calendar, your time that you're going to be in the office. What type of calendar is that? And then under software training, under the treasurer's office, you've got treasurer's assistant with no name. You got department treasurer with no name. And then you have treasurer assistant 3 other times on software. How many assistants do you have in the office? And why were names not listed next to the bill run on where the residents paid for this training? So we've had this discussion several times, and I thought it was clear by now that any taxpayer funds should be listed and documented in the proper form. So if you can get in the habit of doing that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Janice Young, Chesterfield, item 10B, the rezoning request for Cotton Road. This site is currently zoned in accordance with our master plan. Our township has no need for this property to be rezoned, and the rezoning to RM2 will not be compatible with the surrounding uses. It's all commercial except to the south, which is zoned single family. The chart on page 27 of our master plan indicates that going back to 2018, we saw a shift in housing with an increase in multifamily. How many more multifamily units have been developed since 2018? I know Redwood down there is pretty big. It's 129 units. I'd also like to point out that our master plan had an online survey done that indicated the type of housing the residents wanted, and that it should be encouraged is a single-family home, housing for move-up, and second-time home buyers. More multifamily was not listed by a resident in that survey. This rezoning would add to the burden on nearby thoroughfares. Our master plan identifies Cotton Road and Donner and Sugarbush as collector roads that funnel traffic from local areas to arterial roads such as 21 Mile, parts of 23, and Jefferson. Cotton, Donner, and Sugarbush are not meant to be a means to circumvent the nightmare of 23 and Gratiot, but that's what they become. They are becoming more of what is identified in our master plan as principal arterial roads, but they are not designed to carry major movement throughout the area. It's also noted in our master plan that collector roads like Cotton, Donner, and Sugarbush are eligible for federal funding. Has anyone looked into that for us? And if so, can we get an update on that? I'd also like to know what impact multifamily units at this location would have on our water pressure. I'd also like to reiterate that this is not a residential area, hence the commercial zoning. We already had a resident killed on Cotton Road last year. This is not a pedestrian-friendly area. We should not encourage residential building here. The Planning Commission just approved rezoning at the corner of 21 and Sugarbush from single family to professional office. They said it would be a nice buffer between the existing residential and the busy corner. In fact, Mr. Palin noted in his summary that there is not a large amount of professional office zoned property, and the majority of it is already developed. I think that would be a better fit for this property. Finally, we pay Giffords and Webster for their professional opinions, so maybe we should use it. In their opinion letter, they state the following. Item number 3, the applicant has not provided evidence that the property cannot be developed or used as zoned. Item 4, the proposed zoning district of RM2 is not compatible with its use along Cotton Road. Item 5, a full traffic study may be required by the Planning Commission to determine the impact of the change. We really should have that study done, probably on a lot of roads. Item 6, there are undeveloped parcels zoned RM2, including a few at the north end of the township, where we're paying for a sewer line to be put out there. Why not make them build out there where they could start paying us back on the sewer bond? They also identified 3 questions in connection to creating an unplanned spot zone. Is it consistent with the master plan? No. Is it a logical extension of the zoning? No. Would this request grant special benefit to the property? Yes, it would. I respectfully request that you deny this rezoning request because it is not consistent with our master plan and it is not good for the nearby neighborhoods and roads and the township as a whole. Thanks.
Any further comments? Further comments from the public? Item 8, consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 9th, 2024. B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Trustee DeMink, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry.
Trustee DeMink. Aye. Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled. Item 10, the regular agenda.
Item 10A is a recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to appoint Matt Adams to the Beautification Commission and Tree Board to finish the term left vacant by Leirae Smith, the term ending July 1, 2024.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion.
Support.
Is there Treasurer Elliott? Director Vanderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for this one, appointing Matt Adams this evening, which is our recommendation, supervisor's recommendation, would bring the Beautification Commission back to 4 people on the 7-person board. So still some vacancies open, but we're very happy to recommend Matt. I like the way that he phrased it the last time we spoke. He has 30 years in the green industry, so always a good point of view to have on beautification.
Mr. Adams, like to stand just for identification purposes? Welcome and thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 10A. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Director Vanderson. Item 10B.
Item 10B is to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval of rezoning number 369 to rezone 2.45 acres of land from C3 General Commercial to RM2 Multifamily, located on Cotton Road, west of I-94, parcel ID number 0920153008.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Trustee DeMink, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Mr. Palin?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Yeah, you covered it in calling the agenda item, 2.45 acres requesting to be rezoned from C3 General Commercial to RM2 Multifamily. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on October 17th and then voted on the item on November 21st. They unanimously voted to recommend approval to the Township Board. Their reasonings were that the request is consistent with the area and blends well with the R1C, one family residential zoning district immediately to the south of this parcel, so in essence, providing a transition, and that there would be no adverse impact on traffic as Cotton is planned as a higher traffic level road, which it is planned as a collector road. With that, I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, sir. Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, Mr. Palin, I see that a little differently. With respect to traffic, specifically, the notes that were given to the board indicate that there could be an increased traffic and burden on these surrounding roads, and that a full traffic study might be required by the Planning Commission to determine the impact of the change. So I don't necessarily agree that there was a determination that there's no impact. And very clearly, this is not consistent with the master plan. I see that we've done something relatively unique in this proposal in that we are now calling it a transitional, but it's not really consistent with either property parcels, north, south, east, or west. So you go from C3, which the adjacent property is commercial property, and then the property on the other side is single-family residential. So like this idea of a transition, to me, it really is a higher density. We have more people potentially in a 2.45 2.5 acre parcel than we would if we had single family. I could understand single family residential, but mixed use is not consistent with the master plan. And it's, I think, in my review, and I'm not taking issue with the Planning Commission, certainly spent more time on this and heard from the residents. I'd be curious to hear what the public participation was at that public hearing. But I'm just struggling with the this idea that it is consistent with the master plan when the notes indicate that it is most definitely not, and that the introduction of the word a transitioned parcel, but it's not just because I live in that area, but I can tell you that the traffic getting in and out of our sub is really getting quite difficult. When the construction occurred on 23 Mile Road in Gratiot, we spent most of the summer backed up. Everybody did. It was just part of the, but the lights seem to be timed in a way that creates log jams for the subdivisions that are trying to exit off of Donner onto 23 Mile Road. You could sit there for 3 or 4 traffic lights, and I've seen routinely on my way to work in the morning motorists that get frustrated and they peel out and do U-turns to go back through the sub down Donner to Cotton, only to face the same problem at Cotton and Gratiot. So you're creating, I think, a number of problems, and I'm just one vote and one resident, but the transitional designation is something new. I can't say that I'm a big fan of this new adjective to describe something that just really isn't consistent with our master plan, and I think creates more of a traffic problem for the people that live there. So I would be interested in knowing what the public feedback was, and maybe I'm wrong, but I can't see that this is good for the township or the residents that live near that property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? Trustee Domingue?
Mr. Palin, would you read into the record what can go into general, C3 general, like we talked about at planning, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so in the C3 General Commercial District, it's all the uses permitted in C1 and C2, which are of less intensity, but I'll give you the ones that are just C3. So as permitted uses, that as long as they meet the ordinance, would be permitted. They don't require a public hearing. That would be professional office, medical office, uses permitted in immediately abutting residential districts, local retail and service establishments, community and regional retail service establishments, clothing rental, coin-operated service machine operations, membership organizations, automotive dealerships, hotels and motels, mortuaries, public utility buildings, coin-operated laundry, laundromats, miscellaneous personal services, appliance repair, museum and art galleries, automotive rental and leasing, dance studios, physical fitness facilities, veterinary offices, places of worship. I did skip some of the more, ones that are smaller than that in between there, but, and then special land uses, which are a little more intense, they do require a public hearing, would include amusement and recreation services, except racing, amusement device centers, automobile repair and service centers, bowling alleys, tennis houses, racquetball facilities, and similar forms of indoor commercial recreation. Businesses of a drive-in nature, but not including outdoor theaters, fast food restaurants, gasoline self-service stations, open-air businesses, outdoor sales lots for the sale of secondhand automobile, new or secondhand recreation vehicles, boats, or mobile homes. PUD wouldn't apply, it's not enough property. Public utility buildings, residential one-family dwelling and non-residential district, adult bookstores, adult motion picture theaters, adult mini motion picture theaters, hotels or motels, pawn shops, pool or billiard halls, car washes. That's pretty extensive summary of them.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Anderson?
Thank you. I think Trustee Joseph may have touched on this already. I'm looking at page 3 of your document here, paragraph 5, which proposed zoning place a burden on nearby thoroughfares. If so, how would the burden compare with the existing zoning district? I'll go to the last sentence here. A full traffic study may be required by the Planning Commission to determine the impact of the change. After the horse gets out of the barn, we're gonna look at it. I can't support it just based on what I'm hearing. What seems to be the procedure with the county now at Road Commission is that the township seems to be subsidizing county roads, so if this goes through, I'm sure that a future board will have to ante up to make Cotton Road a little more appropriate for the vehicular traffic. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. There are questions from the board?
Just one more.
Trustee Joseph?
Second round, if you would indulge, Mr. Supervisor. I know, and when we go down the list of potential C3 utilizations, before we scare the residents and assure them that the gas station or an adult bookstore is going to go in if we don't approve this, I'm curious to know, what do you anticipate could be the size of units that could fit into a 2.5 acre parcel under the proposed R2 mixed family?
Through a preliminary look with the applicant, it's a maximum of 17 units.
So we could put 17 units potentially in a 2.5 acre area with, you know, an already stressed traffic compared to a laundromat. This parcel is pretty, as you can see, it's tucked in behind. There's the drugstore right on the corner, if I recall right. We have a little bit of space between the back end of the parking lot of the drugstore and this parcel, which has been empty forever. I would argue that the reason that we haven't seen some of the other proposed or permitted uses in the C3 is because it's economically not viable. So, you know, that I think is the hedge against these, what it could be. The reality is what it is. And so if we have a legitimate, we have a C3 that is difficult to develop because the permitted uses really don't fit with the size, I think that the default setting would be single-family residential. We can eliminate this whole transition adjective and be consistent with what the property next to it is. The mixed-use residential, I think, adds tremendous density, and as I pointed out, and Trustee Anderson, if that's not determined to be a viable concern, what about just the recommendation that a full traffic study should be done before approval? I would like to see a full traffic study done, and if the traffic study indicates that it doesn't create, I'll gladly support it. But I think it will. I think the traffic study will reveal that 17 additional units in a 2.5 acre area that close to already logjam traffic could be problematic. So I'd really like to see the traffic study, Trustee Domink, before I could support this. But again, just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Clerk Bear.
Thank you, Jonathan. What types of housing developments may be placed into this zoning district that's proposed?
So the request is for multifamily. We do not regulate based on ownership, so
Right.
it could be apartments, condos, multiplexes, duplexes. They can even do single family. And you know that the single family's been brought up. The property as currently zoned can also be developed as multifamily. It wouldn't require rezoning, so that option has been on the table. So that's not really something that was discussed because that wasn't part of the application. But yeah, it's essentially any form of multifamily housing.
Okay, and secondly, I thought it was a good question. Was there a discussion had on the impact on existing infrastructure, for example, water pressures and other utilities and things like that? And any discussion on the infrastructure impact from the rezoning?
There wasn't at that level. That's typically looked at the site plan stage. So that's, you know, kind of always the issue at hand, is we're looking at the zoning on a more broad scale, and then if the rezoning's approved, they come back with drawings and design, and that's when all that's considered.
Thank you.
Real quick, Jonathan, anything that the applicant proposes there has to come back for engineering and approvals, not only with the road commission for access and road design, but also with infrastructure, correct?
Yes, all of that would have to come back. At this point, it's just strictly the underlying zoning, so any use regardless would have to come back for review, not only for site plan by the planning commission, but then also submitted to engineering for engineering design, and then the other agencies that go along with that, like the Department of Roads.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Domingue?
There was a question at planning when this was going on regarding, from one of the residents regarding water pressure. And I asked Mr. O'Connor to do a pressure test and tell us, Mr. O'Connor, do you remember what those were right off the top of your head? I know you sent me an email, but I couldn't find it. I know you did look into that after I spoke with you regarding that, sir.
Thank you. Of course, my short-term memory loss is kicking in, but we did send Timmy Brooks out there and did a pressure reading in a nearby hydrant, and it was acceptable pressure. There was nothing, there wasn't a concern from the water department with the water pressure at that
For some
point.
reason, I'm thinking 40,
Yeah, I
45,
do.
something like that, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I would have remembered if it was a low pressure.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Further comments from the board? I have a motion by trustee Domingue, supported by Supervisor Kersten to approve item 10B. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Clerk Berry, no.
Item 10C.
Item 10C is to approve a recommendation by Public Services to award surveying services for AEW for Pollard Park property line staking in the amount of $6,500.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve the request. Is there any support?
Second.
Clerk Berry? Mr. O'Connor?
Thank you. Good evening. Pollard Park, which is shown here, is 4 separate properties. This is a proposal to stake the perimeter, the bold red line, the overall perimeter of the park. Wooden lats would be placed at every 100 feet along these property lines. The corners would be established. And then I spoke with F&O this morning. We would then put something more permanent, something metal, like a post or something that we could keep track of and after that survey is complete. AEW did there are some green pins on the southwest area of the overall park. AEW did a survey back in and around 2015 of that area and established those corners. This would be to finish up the entire park all the way up to 26 Mile Road, as shown there.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the board? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I know you are in contact with the AEW and Spalding. How many times have we surveyed this? And I seem to recall a couple of projects where we've had this debate about surveying and resurveying, and what's different about this request as it relates to the other surveying work that's been done at Pollard Park? Because I think maybe my first term, and we had tremendous debate about multiple surveys being done at Pollard, and we were assured, again, I don't have my long-term memory, but like we were assured after, I think, maybe the third time that we had surveying, in front of the board, that this was permanent and that nothing changes as long as we own the property. These will be the surveys. What's different about the request now?
Yeah, and we found the survey, again, from 2015. I think it might be in the board packet, the AEW survey. And it was for the area, the southwest area where those green pins are. The areas, the larger areas, to our knowledge, have never been surveyed. Those property lines have never been staked out. So this would establish those property lines. And once you get the property lines established, it kind of opens up the possibility to do more things at the park. But we found no record of any survey other than the one that AEW did around 2015, just in the area of the green pins is shown there.
Please, Trustee Joseph.
We had, some surveying work that was done because we had a private property that was in dispute, right?
It was
private property.
It was the
that was in-
gas thing, Dave.
Yes.
The gas thing, excuse me, sir.
So this, you're saying, go ahead, Mitch, I think.
No, that is the survey. Yeah, that is the survey that was done in 2015, was for the gas. They own that property, and that had to be reestablished. You can see it kind of cuts in and out to match what was actually constructed in the field. There was a property line dispute, and that's why that survey was done. But the entire park, the perimeter of the entire park is, to our knowledge, has never been done.
And this is something that we're not able to do in-house. Like the surveying equipment that's required is a specialty. I know that I've asked these before, but this type of survey work, we can't do in-house.
Yeah, we could not do it in-house. You would have to buy, they'll probably use GPS equipment. And the reason we want to do it in the winter is because there's really not a lot of foliage on the trees, so it's easier for the satellites to pick it up. But we don't have the equipment or the manpower to do this in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Just to backfill on some of the conversations. So yes, as Mitch described, there was a survey done. It was in this property line dispute on the property fields. That was the only land survey that affected that west boundary for the ball diamonds. What we are looking for is encompasses the entire property, including the 80 acres in the high red area that goes all the way out to 26 Mile Road. There's no record of that ever being done. Much like when you buy property, you have a land survey done and you put pins in place. And to the one comment that was made by the resident is yes, and the intention is to permanently mark and pin these locations so they are there forever. We don't have to bring it back and do it again. One of the reasons behind this is township property. It's a beautiful piece of property, and we are trying to create accessibility for the residents to use this property, either for walking paths or some sort of value where it can be utilized for biking, hiking, and without knowing where the property pins are. That's why the recommendation is, the request is here for, in front of the board to pin the entire property. Did I miss anything? Any further questions? Trustee Joe?
Just a comment, Mr. Supervisor. I would note that the estimate or the bid from AEW is like almost half of some of the other surveying. I think Spalding to Decker was almost twice as much. So if it fits with the the future plans, and we haven't done it before, we can't do it in-house, I'll be in support. Thanks.
And again, one of the factors in AEW selection was they do have some of these records already in their records. So, any further questions? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10C. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 10D.
Item 10D is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to purchase 3 patrol vehicles and 3 administration vehicles for the police department to replace aging vehicles in our fleet in the amount of $396,039.53.
So moved.
Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Director Bassett, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here this evening requesting 3 patrol vehicles, which we'll be replacing. Those vehicles have reached end of functional life as a police vehicle. We typically use those for the cadets first, and then we will then auction those vehicles off, and also the replacement of 3 administrative vehicles. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Questions from the board? I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve the request 10D. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 11, addendums, there are none. Item 12, public comments. There is, again, a 3-minute time limit. If you would, please state your name for the record. Mic is open.
Mike Orton, 50393 Bauer. Yeah, just real brief, what I always bring up here. When will everyone address changing the rules again to change the time limits on the public comments? And will my previous issues regarding the fire department ever get addressed. I know they won't tonight, and I know they never will, but I just want to put on comment to say that. Thank you.
Paul LaFata, Chesterfield. I think it's time for the residents to start their performance reviews on our elected officials. It's getting close to primaries. And I don't do Facebook, but one of my neighbors talked to me last week and said that Supervisor Kersten has already started his campaigning for the 2024 primaries. He says there's weekly videos posted on the township website, on the Facebook website. Like I said, I don't do Facebook, paid for by residents' tax dollars. And then she said she went over to Brad Kirsten's Facebook's CTE, Committee to Elect, and all the same videos and postings are there that the township paid for. She says, I didn't think that was correct. The other issue is there's not enough resident involvement in Chesterfield Township. So a lot of young residents, they're too busy trying to make, a livelihood, taking care of their children. They don't subscribe to the local newspapers. They don't know what's going on in the Chesterfield town halls. They're not aware that fund balances are shrinking. They're not aware that their water and sewer rates are going to go up. They don't know why, or even care why a 26-mile road sewer project is going to be built and won't benefit any current residents, or what the real reason is for a hasty purchase of Sugar Bush Elementary School that's 50 years old with residents' ARPA funds. Most residents aren't aware. The board majority has changed the rules to silence the residents. Really, they don't want to answer questions. And we're in a $14.5 million bond debt that will end up costing the residents in the long run. Performance reviews, they're simple, they're direct, they're honest, they're personal, and they're blunt. And it shouldn't take any longer than 3 minutes to come to a decision. Just listen to the township board, read an opinion article in The Voice, and then fill it out. 0. So it's incumbent for us to get together, concerned residents, it's our responsibility to change what's wrong. And when somebody says it's consistent with the master plan, that's a catch-all for everything. When they had the residents for the master plan, there was 200 for 45,365 residents. If you look at statistical analysis, that sampling plan, to be accurate, should have been at least 2,000 residents. So that's why we have a lot of debate and a lot of failure. We don't do things right.
Thank you, sir.
Christopher Pierrick, Embassy Street. So there's a notice in The Voice last week for that there's going to be a public hearing at the next township board meeting for the residents to discuss what they want to do with $23,500 of community development block grant funds. So I just want to thank you for your due diligence and going forward, being good stewards of what's afforded to the township. It's just too bad that we didn't do that with the $4.9 million of ARPA funds. Should have done the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments?
Joe Kadich, just wanted to touch on one thing that we couldn't touch on when you're going through it, was in that issue over whether that 2.5 acres could be changed over to multifamily or whatever. One of the issues that came up during the Planning Commission was the water pressure. Now, you said you had it checked, but the issue came up, they complained about the fact It's in the morning, when everybody's getting ready to go to work, go to school, whatever, and that's when they have the problem with the pressure. If you don't check it at that time, you're just going to multiply, if there is a problem, it's just going to multiply, problem's going to just multiply. Beyond that, I guess I wanted to talk about the fact that the school issue that you told the planning department or the Parks and Rec department that you had 4 votes in your pocket that you could buy the school. Instead of using that money, you had 3 grants there totaling $12 million. I don't know what's left. But instead of using that to go through and find out what's wrong with our sewers and upgrade them, replace the money that you used in other places, that should be done first. The other thing about the school is, I don't know, maybe we should talk to the school board. We paid for those schools already. I belonged to the anchor-based school district. Well, my taxes got paid for that. Those things, you know, if you're going to get it over, you should talk to them, say, you know, they own it, give it to us anyway. Give us a dollar transfer or something so that we don't have to pay for it. Then the only issue you got is what you're going to do to rehab it and where's those millions going to come from. It's really, you know, you use that, I think, as a tactic to draw attention away to really what happened in the sewers and in the flooding that we had. It's a good tactic. Offer people something else and don't forget what, you know, just forget what I did here and neglected the sewers. I really find that obnoxious. Thank you.
Further comments?
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. We can already tell that this board's in campaign mode. There's no doubt about it. So getting back to when taxpayers' money is being used, yeah, I agree totally that the residents are paying for a video. It shouldn't be on anybody's Facebook page, especially their CTE to elect. I mean, Dave, you know that's totally wrong. I mean, how many times have you talked about an attorney that when you're using campaign dollars or taxpayer dollars, you can't do that? I mean, I agree totally. That's wrong. As far as at the last township meeting, I asked Treasurer Elliott if she could give me an update on how many tax bills in the township went out that were incorrect. I requested that over 2 weeks ago. It doesn't require a FOIA. You work in the treasurer's department, you're the treasurer. I figured that you would email me, call me, and get back with me before the next township meeting and answer the question. I know you know. And if you can explain what happened with the wrong amount on the tax bills going out, I would appreciate it, because somebody with a mortgage company, the bill gets sent to the mortgage company pays the first bill that went out, doesn't pay the second bill, all of a sudden, full amount isn't paid, now there's a lien on somebody's home. What do we do to rectify that? Just curious. As far as Mr. Wharton's comments, public comments, the only time public comments are going to be changed is when this board gets changed, because this is a fascist, authoritarian type of regime. So there is no democracy with this board. So democracy was gone when they voted to end public comments on agenda item. This is a fascist regime, and Supervisor Kersten is a fascist leader. So, and that's just the way it is. As far as the ARPA funds, the supervisor believes the $4.8 million are his money. They're the residents' money. He promised he was going to have a meeting, but when his lips are moving, what do I say? In my opinion, he's lying. Performance reviews. If this board had to go through performance reviews, none of them would be rehired, in my opinion. So, as a matter of fact, there's I forget what state it is, that's trying to make a ballot initiative that if full-time employees miss more than 8 working days, they are no longer qualified to be on the ballot. Water and sewer rates did go up, no question about it. I mean, Supervisor Kersten, put that north sewer in on the north end for the wealthy and well-connected on the taxpayer's dime.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure you do.
Further comments?
Janice Young. Supervisor Kersten, when I came to the clerk's office 2 weeks ago to pay for my FOIA request, you came out to the counter and we had a little chat. Here's some of the highlights from that. You said you remembered telling me early last year that I was welcome to sit down with you anytime. You asked me why I haven't, and I told you it's because I feel that you need to answer questions in public, not in a private meeting. I want your answers on the record. And the following are examples why. I asked you why you never answer questions at board meetings. You said that you would not respond to political posturing. I said, that's not me or what I do, so why don't you answer my questions? And you said that answers were too complicated and that you don't want to be at meetings until 1 a.m. explaining them. When I asked about the detention pond questions that I submitted to Mitch O'Connor, you told me several times that the answers are too complicated for me to understand, that there are resolutions, blah, blah, blah. I said, I didn't ask about resolutions. I asked where the 6 ponds are and what subdivisions impacted them. You said that you would answer the questions via email, and you sort of did. You answered one question. But just so everyone can see the questions and the responses, I posted those emails on social media just before the meeting. You told me that the detention ponds are so bad because no administration before you has ever done anything to maintain them. I asked you why, and you made up some reason or another why they didn't do it. I find it very interesting that your immediate predecessor has since moved on to our County Drain Commission. If your statement about prior administrations doing nothing about our drain infrastructure is even remotely true, and now that person serves on the County Drain Commission, we're in trouble, and not just in Chesterfield. And I also can't help but wonder how he would feel knowing that you're talking down about him off the record to all the residents. You also mentioned that Mr. LaFata served as treasurer for 4 years and did nothing. I don't know what his accomplishments were or weren't, but you felt the need to throw him under the bus. But then again, you threw every administration before you under the bus. When I asked about fixing the roads with the ARPA funds, instead of buying the school, your comment was, you're gonna love this, who uses the roads anyway? Visitors and guests? I almost fell over when you said that. I'm like, I live and work in this township. I drive on these roads every day. It just goes to show how much out of touch you are with the residents. I just can't even believe it. When I asked you about having a town hall meeting on the ARPA funds, you said that it would be total chaos and nothing good would come out of it, no resolution. I said that wasn't true. I said the residents would have the opportunity to have their voices heard and discuss the best use of the money. You said that being a Chesterfield police officer for 33 years gave you the knowledge to know what's best for the residents. Really? How does that work? I don't see the connection. You also said that if I worked at the township, that I would walk off the job after a week because the work is so difficult. That's pretty funny considering that you don't know me. It just proves that you think everyone else is inferior to you. I said that you sit at these meetings and with such arrogance that people can't hear what you have to say, and you just smirked and nodded. And here's a reality check for you. You're not better than anybody, you're not smarter than anybody, and you're certainly not above anybody. And just for fun, before I came here, I Googled God complex. A God complex is a pattern in which an individual believes they have great power, ability, infallibility, influence, and are superior to others. It often refers to behaviors associated with narcissistic personality disorder. Someone like this may feel entitled to special treatment, act as though rules don't apply to them, and generally disregard the needs of others. They can also become intensely jealous and controlling. I think that should be retitled the Kersten complex.
Further comments?
Mike Rayner, Jack Grove Lane. Excuse me. I'm a basics kind of guy, so I won't make this complicated. I try to keep things simple. And actually, I have a few stickers on my car. One of them says, "A vote is your voice." So I think we all need to rely on our voice at the ballot box. It's interesting, we have a little sample out in the hall. So when it gets down to it, that's the way we make a change. One of the major problems we have is not enough people vote. So I'll tell you, my concentration going forward is getting out the vote in a nonpartisan manner. I'm not going to be waving anybody's banner. It's kind of like a clinical study. The bigger the sample, the better the outcome. So I look at things pretty simply. 3 minutes versus 5, give me a break. 2 more minutes. I think this is ridiculous. 3 minutes instead of 5. Also, like I said before, Comments are usually actually questions, and we don't get answers. So why this isn't more of a Q&A, I don't get. I mentioned last time I went to New Baltimore Board, and we had nothing but, God bless you, we had nothing but feedback. You know, we sat and chatted about it. We got answers. I don't know why that's so complicated. So I'm going to go to the Macomb Board next because I'm interested in trying to get this bus on 23 Mile Road to go west to the area between Romeo Plank and Van Dyke where it's really needed. So I'm curious to see how the Macomb Board acts. This just can't be typical. This just can't be. And the last minor thing is, you know, because I'm about people walking, you know, and taking the bus. I noticed the walk that was finally put in, excuse me, between the railroad tracks and Rezoning Schmidt. You know, is it our responsibility to shovel sidewalks, or does MDOT do that, or transportation, whatever? I mean, it's nice to have a sidewalk, except when it snows and ice is on there. So anyway, your vote is your voice, folks, so let's express it at every single level. And every position on the ballot is important. School board, local, state, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Anderson, you want to start tonight?
I don't want to burn up my 3 minutes. Just believe there's a tremendous amount of untapped wisdom and expertise among the residents. Your opinions and your comments. I wish this board would pay more to it. It seems at times, and it's my opinion, that the decisions made on your behalf are in a vacuum. I'll see everybody on February 13th. Be careful out there with the weather. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I try to take notes, and I'll try to answer questions, starting with the public comments that were let off the meeting. I can never understand, Mr. Kadich, and I talked incessantly about it when it happened. There is no reason that a sewer backup should be connected to stormwater. And something went wrong there, and I hope it's resolved, but I don't blame you a bit for continuing to press for answers as to why you and so many other residents had sewage in your basement in a rain event. I take issue slightly with the concerns about the closed sessions that were postponed tonight. We had some late notice that our attorney was unable to be here due to unforeseen circumstances, but what I hope comes out of those closed sessions is a resolution that keeps us from being in court, and that's in your interest and in the interest of the public. I will tell you this, that in my study of billboards in general, you will see a tremendous amount of them along Hall Road as a number of properties have entered into billboard arrangements. And so the nice thing about the billboard in this particular area is that, as I've said before, it helps with branding, and branding is a big deal. The city of Sterling Heights, I believe, just committed $200,000 to additional branding for their, what Mayor Taylor calls the Golden Corridor. So we are in our own best interest to make sure that we have some branding. Mr. LaFatte, I'm going to come back to you. Mr. Speaker, I can't go as far as fascist. This description, I think, might be exceeding what true fascism is, but I understand your frustration over the time limits and the lack of interest in hearing from our public. Most disappointed, and I'll spare it, she's not here today, Trustee Vosberg's legacy to usher in this reduction in public comments and reducing the amount of time to hear from our residents, I think will tarnish an otherwise positive legacy. It is really perplexing to me why the disagreements that we have during listening to our public are seen as a better move to eliminate them. I will never understand that. I agree, Mr. Kadich, who came back and talked about water pressure should be measured during peak performance, otherwise it's useless. It becomes difficult, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to bounce around, but there were two opportunities. Taxpayer money in the utilization of township websites, that couldn't have been 3 minutes. Could I get an additional minute, Mr. Supervisor? Thank you. Thank you. Taxpayer money for township websites, I'm backwards now, I'm sorry, that 3 minutes threw me off. The point that you were making was that there was a utilization of township resources, and I can honestly say that that is not the case. I post videos from the library or different places, and I didn't create the production of it, and I didn't, but it is of value to let people know. And there's different rules for public and private Facebook accounts. I would like to see a singular policy as it relates to township Facebook and social media. Either we're allowing comments or we aren't allowing comments on all social media sites. And so maybe we can have some work done on that. Lastly, I just wanted to say, sometimes in politics there's some ugly things, and then there are some things that happen, and they've happened to me personally over the years. I've met some individuals that I wouldn't probably have otherwise come in contact with. We lost one of those individuals this week. Marv Sauger was a long-term servant of this county. He served on the Board of Commissioners, and he was a friend to law enforcement. He comes from a law enforcement background. Marv was always committed to the average person, and my dealings with him at the county, I always found him to be a very genuine, just a gentleman who was deeply concerned not only about law enforcement, but other areas involving children, in particular the areas I work in. And his loss is a tremendous loss to the county, and my heart goes out to his family. A life well lived. Lastly, Paul LaFata is one of those guys that I've met through my travels, and I don't know that we would have crossed paths had it not been for politics. And I consider you to be a true gem and an asset to this community. I appreciate the emails that you send, and I don't know the conversation that Ms. Young was talking about, but I can assure you that Paul LaFata did a tremendous amount during his 4 years on this board. And if you want just one, take a look at the fact that we have a vibrant police department. As if that's your only metric, that in and of itself was worthy of his work on this board over the 4 years. So I don't know the conversation, but I just want to clear the record. He is a true gem, and we don't get those very often in this community. So thanks for the indulgence and the extra time, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Domingue.
Real quick, just one main thing, reference the rezoning on Cotton Road. That was vetted by Planning Commission, and as we all know, the Planning Commission members, I'm the only elected person up there. Everyone else is a resident, just like you out there. They vetted it. They listened to the residents. The issue was brought up that I had Mr. Palin read what could go in there, and the Planning Commission came back and they voted to approve it the way it was. Basically, it was better to put, they thought it was better to put in the housing rather than commercial in there, especially what could go in there being some type of businesses that would cause more disruption to the residents over on Dove Lane and the other streets, which I don't know off the top of my head. So that's my input on that. And lastly, go Lions.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. On tonight's agenda, the item A, and then also the other item for the item C for the Pollard Park. It's good to see that there's a beautification commission and a tree board being established, and that members of the public are taking an interest in that. And I know that we've had some conversations about planting more trees around the township, and it is also good to see that we are now looking at Pollard Park as being more accessible. As we start to develop, and I know a lot of folks who've lived in the township for, maybe 10, 15 years, you've seen some changes and a lot of developments, and it's nice to see that we're also considering balancing that out with more beautification, more conscientious green space, and taking and utilizing the parks and pathways better, Pollard Park being very underutilized. As far as a question about tax bills, if there is a tax bill that needs to be resent, it is resent to the mortgage company receives that, and then they send the corrected payment. It's actually a very easy process. We've actually established a portal for mortgage companies to pay, and they don't send checks or anything like that pretty much anymore. They just send it right through the portal. So if there's any other questions, feel free to send an email through the citizen request form. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of things that I neglected to mention during my department report. The Election Commission will be meeting this Thursday, January the 25th at 10 a.m. here at the township offices. That is open to the public. That happens and is required by statute before every election. Among the business that will be discussed will be appointment of election inspectors, receiving board, absentee counting board members, delegation of duties, and so on. That's standard. That happens before every election, so that is open to the public if you are interested in that. The agenda will be published, was published today. Another question that I've had come into the office is from those who plan to be precinct delegates in August. A lot of people, or there's been several people who have submitted their affidavits of identity for that partisan seat. However, because Chesterfield Township has changed its precinct boundaries and there's a number of things that will change regarding that, precinct delegates will need to resubmit a new affidavit of identity to the county. That does not come here anymore. That goes to the county clerk's office. Also, we have an event that we are working on as part of our voter education program, and it's the 2024 election open house. That will be on Friday, February the 16th, from 6:30 till 8 p.m. It's basically a soft opening, as early voting will start the next day. At that open house, all of residents are invited to come and see how early voting is going to be conducted beginning that next day, as well as we'll be there to answer any questions. They'll be able to see the equipment that we use, and again, answer any questions about the process or any of the materials or equipment that we use to conduct elections, and we'll be happy to have a short presentation and answer any questions. Lastly, on Friday, January the 19th, myself and Deputy Clerk Niza and a member of the Clerk's Department visited the Veterans Home on what was the old Seville Manor. And we spoke with approximately 40 of their residents about changes to the elections. We were invited to come there and update all of them, since many of them can't get out. And so we brought the information to them. We were also prepared to supply them with any clerk services, notary services, absentee ballot applications, and so on and so forth, and making them aware of all of the changes for the 2024 elections, as many of them vote absentee, and there have been quite a few changes in that regard. I'd like to encourage everyone to stop by and visit that Veterans Home. Many of those who gave so much and sacrificed so much for us are alone there, and many are disabled, and I know that they would appreciate it. They loved seeing us, and we were there for a couple of hours. We don't have photos or anything like that because there's a strict rule on what you can do there in terms of photos, and we can't do that. But I assure you we were there, and I encourage all of you to visit those wonderful people over there, and it was a privilege and honor to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Just some quick comments. In the next agenda, or within the next 2 weeks, the board will have a substantial package, both in documents and electronic file, of the proposal to review and purchase the Sugar Bush Elementary School. I don't have a set date for that right now. We're putting all of those documents together along with the purchase agreement, and my hope is to get it to you, because it's voluminous, get it to you with some time so you can study it. This will include all the engineering studies and reports that we have for you to review, and then return with some questions, which is expected. We had a great meeting with the Department of Roads at the county last week, and also with the Drain Commissioner again. That's in a project to continue our conversations with cleaning drains and water issues within the township, particularly during floods. We've engaged with a Paiser study for subdivisions with the Macomb County Department of Roads, and we hope to have that result in front of their call for projects in 2025. Side note, we did get a notice, and we forwarded it to you, that the Gratiot corridor will be resurfaced in 2024, and it will come from downtown Mount Clemens all the way out to 23 and 94. And then on a side note, we're working on hosting elected officials here in the township over in the month of February. We're trying to work on that scheduling, and we'll invite each one of the elected officials to participate in that when we solidify those dates. That's all I have to report, and I will take a motion to adjourn at 8:20. Clerk.
Support?
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by clerk Barry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.